All right, today we are diving deep into a concept that is absolutely critical for any company's survival: liquidity ratios. We're going to break down what they are, why they matter so much, and maybe the most interesting part, how they can sometimes be a bit of a magic trick to hide what's really going on.
So let me ask you a question. Picture this. A company is posting record profits, the headlines are glowing, everyone's celebrating, but could it secretly be on the brink of collapse? It sounds completely nuts, right? But can a profitable company actually go bankrupt?
And the answer, which might surprise you, is a resounding yes. A company can be profitable on paper, making millions, but still crash and burn if it can't pay its bills on time. And the reason for this nightmare scenario comes down to one simple, powerful word: liquidity.
This really gets to the heart of it. The best way to think about it is the difference between being asset-rich and being cash-rich. You know, a company might own a massive, valuable factory, but you can't exactly slice off a corner of the factory wing to pay your employees' salaries next Friday. Liquidity is all about the cash you can get your hands on right now. This slide breaks it down perfectly. Think of profitability like a movie. It tells you the whole story of what a company earned over an entire quarter or a year. But liquidity, that's a snapshot. A single high-stakes photo that answers a much more urgent question. Right this second, can the company pay what it owes?
So how do we actually measure this? Well, we don't just guess. We use a toolkit of different financial ratios. We're going to start with the most common one, kind of a blunt instrument, and then we'll level up to the precision tools that serious analysts use to get the real story. First up is the most famous one, the one you probably learned about first, the current ratio. The formula is really straightforward. You just take a company's current assets, that stuff it can turn into cash within a year, and you divide it by its current liabilities, which are all the bills it needs to pay within that same year. Simple. Now, the traditional wisdom, the textbook answer, says a healthy current ratio is 2-to-1. And the logic makes sense, right? For every single dollar you owe in the near future, you should have $2 in assets ready to cover it. It gives you a nice, comfortable cushion.
But here's the problem. A 2-to-1 ratio sounds great, but the current ratio has a massive flaw. It assumes all current assets are created equal. But are they really? I mean, what if that inventory is a warehouse full of last season's unsold clothes? What if your debtors are customers who are notorious for paying late, if at all? All of a sudden, that $2 cushion feels a lot less reliable.
And this is exactly why smart analysts upgrade to the quick ratio. Some people call it the acid test ratio, which sounds intense, because it is. It's a much stricter test. You see, it takes those questionable assets, specifically inventory and things like prepaid expenses, and just kicks them right out of the equation.
Now, because this test is so much tougher, the ideal number is different. For the quick ratio, a 1-to-1 is considered the gold standard. It means you have exactly $1 of easily accessible liquid cash for every $1 of bills coming due. You don't need to hope for a fire sale on your inventory just to keep the lights on. And this really gets to the core of what quick assets are. These are the assets you can count on in a pinch. Inventory is out because you just can't guarantee you can sell it quickly or for a good price. This laser focus gives us a much more honest, much truer picture of a company's ability to survive a sudden cash crisis. So as you can see here, we really have a whole spectrum of tools. The current ratio is your broad overall look. The quick ratio is that much stricter test of what you can pay off immediately. And then you have the cash ratio, which is the ultimate stress test. It only looks at pure, hard cash against what you owe. Okay, now just when you think you've got this all figured out, assets are good, liabilities are bad, we're going to throw a curveball. We're about to explore a fascinating paradox where, for certain types of companies, owing a bunch of money in the short term is actually a sign of a fantastic business.
So this seems like it should be a trick question, right? Negative working capital. That's when your short-term debts are actually bigger than your short-term assets. I mean, that has to be a five-alarm fire for any business, doesn't it?
Well, the answer is it completely depends on the type of business. For a big manufacturing company with slow-moving inventory that sells on credit, yes, negative working capital is a huge red flag. But for a supermarket or an e-commerce giant, a company that gets cash instantly from you, the customer, but pays its suppliers 30 or 60 days later, it's actually the sign of an incredibly efficient business model. This timeline shows you exactly how this magic works. On day 0, a customer walks in and pays you 100 rupees cash for a product. But you don't actually have to pay your supplier the 80 rupees for that product until day 30. What does that mean? It means for a full month, you're using your supplier's money to run your business, completely interest-free. It's an amazing cash-generating machine.
But what if the numbers we're analyzing aren't even real? We have to talk about something called window dressing. Think of it like frantically cleaning your house just before your parents come to visit. Companies can do the same thing with their finances to make them look much prettier than they actually are, especially right around picture day, the end of the financial year.
And that's what window dressing is. It's all about making these temporary tweaks to the books right before they have to be reported, just to make things look a little bit better. The key word here is temporary. The real health of the company hasn't changed one bit, just how it looks on that specific day.
So let's see how this works. A few days before the year ends, this company has 100 in assets and 80 in liabilities. That gives them a current ratio of 1.25. It's okay, but it's way below that ideal 2-to-1 benchmark we talked about. It doesn't look great.
Now, watch the trick. The company takes some of its cash and pays off 20 rupees of its liabilities right before the deadline. Now, the assets are 80 and the liabilities are 60. And because of how fractions work, the ratio magically jumps up to 1.67. It looks so much healthier. But has anything fundamentally changed? Not at all. A week later, they'll just take on new debt.
And this is precisely why sharp analysts always favor the quick ratio. It's just much harder to fool. Because it ignores inventory. Any games they play with overvaluing their stock don't matter. It focuses on things like cash and receivables, which are just plain harder to manipulate on a short-term basis. It cuts through the noise.
Okay, let's wrap this up with one last pro tip. Seriously, this is the kind of tiny detail that separates the beginners from the experts, and it's a classic trap that shows up on finance exams all the time.
It all comes down to a little line item called advance tax. Now, it's listed as a current asset, so the common mistake is to include it when you're calculating the quick ratio. But just think about it for a second. That's money you've already paid to the government. You can't get it back tomorrow to pay your suppliers. It's not a quick asset at all, and correctly removing it can totally change your analysis of a company's health.
So what have we learned? A simple ratio is never really that simple. The context, like what industry a company's in, and the tiny details, like how you treat advance tax, can flip the entire story on its head. It really leaves you with a final, important question. What other hidden stories are just sitting there waiting to be found inside a company's financial reports?